Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our VBC Happy Hour for this Monday, April 24th. You are all, and I am in for a treat tonight because we have 99-year-old Bob Miller, a World War II veteran who was involved in 6 major invasions and served on 11 different ships. He joined the Navy before Pearl Harbor, almost 1 full year before Pearl Harbor, and lived through just a huge part of history. And we're going to cover a little bit of that tonight. I know by my count, the 6 major invasions: North Africa, Southern France, Lingayen Gulf, Luzon, Philippines, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and then a lot of other lesser known invasions in the Pacific. And Bob was there for all of it, and he made it through, and he made it to 2023, and he's joining us from Millinocket, Maine, and is going to be sharing his story. How are you, Bob?
Great. And it's good to see everybody.
It's so great to see you. You know, I had a conversation with Bob a little bit last Friday, just to kind of talk about what we were going to do tonight. And in this conversation with Bob, I'm sitting there listening to these wonderful stories from a wonderful man. And I just realized I have the best job on earth, that I get to do this for a living. And it is just a pleasure. I know we have some new people in the house tonight, so I thought I would just introduce myself. My name is Todd DiPastino. I am the executive director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we're a nonprofit that has been around since 2008. We were founded here in Pittsburgh, PA, where I am. I'm actually at VBC headquarters, which is in the attic of my house. And this is where I spend most days doing the work and broadcasting our online programs. What we do is we get together, we invite the public to get together once a week online, and then we do it in person also, to listen to veterans share stories and otherwise have conversations around the military experience, past and present. You never know what you're going to hear. We've been doing it for 15 years. Our slogan is "Every veteran has a story." And so it's been 15 years and we haven't run out of stories. So we're keeping going. It's just a wonderful experience for all of us. And I believe we might have Phil Horowitz with us. I'm not sure though. If we do, can you wave your hand, Phil, if you're with us here? You could just go like that. I just want to introduce you to people.
Yes, I can do my.
Phil, is that you? Maybe not. And we also have Eric Montgomery with us. Hello, Eric. I just got an email from Eric. I want to introduce people to Eric. Eric is a tireless and selfless supporter, promoter. What else is he? Aid to World War II veterans, and he has been for a long time. Eric, you live in Tennessee. You're probably responsible for more World War II veterans receiving the French Legion of Honor than anybody in the country. How many veterans have you helped receive the French Legion of Honor?
54 so far.
54. And right before we went live, I got an email from Eric asking if Bob Miller had a French Legion of Honor. I didn't think he had, but Bob, you do have that French Legion of Honor. You were awarded that.
Oh yes, when I was in Florida, they gave it to me. In fact, they have a paper that they put out, and in that paper they had my whole story.
Oh wow! And Eric, I just want to. I thought maybe what you could do to help us all here is, let people know a little bit about the French Legion of Honor, and if they know a veteran who participated in the liberation of France, how they might contact you so that you could help them get the award.
Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate this opportunity. Of course, the French Legion of Honor is the highest honor that the French can bestow upon a person that's done great deeds for France. And obviously that would be our World War II veterans who helped liberate France from the shores of Normandy, southern France, St. Raphael, and all throughout the French frontier as it approached the Siegfried Line and the Rhine River. The qualifications for the Legion of Honor is that you must have participated in combat operations in one of the following campaigns: Normandy, Northern France, Southern France, and in some cases, the Rhineland. And the Rhineland, even the French are a little confused sometimes of what Rhineland means. But I've been very successful at advancing applications for worthy World War II veterans who fought not just in just outside of Paris and at its way towards the eastern frontier of France, so the German border with France. So it's been my honor and privilege, and I thank you so much, Todd, for your kind introduction, and to nominate a fellow for the French Legion of Honor. He must have his discharge papers. And then from those discharge papers, I would work with that veteran to craft up his application, his narrative, and then advance that nomination to the correct consul here in the United States. There are 10 different regions here in the US, and primarily because of Pittsburgh, that would be in Washington, D.C. And from west of Pennsylvania, that would be Chicago. So there's I've worked with every single one of them, and I'm more than happy to help any World War II veteran who has one of those four qualifications to advance their nomination. So to reach me, I'll ask, can I share my phone number if that's all right?
Yes, and why don't you put it in the chat here, and then we could share it on the Facebook side and on the YouTube side, just so you could share it in the chat so people could just copy it and take it, and then we'll post it there.
Thank you, and congratulations, Bob, on your achievement.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I thought it included when we invaded French West Africa.
Not that I'm aware of. I have never been told that by the French government. And then, of course, you could say the same thing for some of the French territories in Southeast Asia. And I've asked that question because, you know, those territories were colonies of the French, but they are insistent that it's just Normandy, Northern France, Rhineland, and Southern France.
Well, I was there for Southern France, so I'm covered.
Yeah, you're covered. You're covered, Bob. But that's a wonderful question. I also want to invite anybody here who's here for the first time, who hasn't joined us before. Please do introduce yourself in the chat. You can put, especially if you're a veteran, let us know where you served, when you served, or just say hello. And we love this to be a conversational program. So just go wave your hand like this in front of the camera if you want to make a comment or ask a question, or raise your hand like Scott and Sean were. Scott Masters, how are you today? Thank you very much for introducing us to Bob and getting him on this program.
Oh, it's very much my pleasure. I also wanted to introduce to you the man who is labeled Anne on screen. His name is Michel Mockers, and he is a 100-year-old member of La Résistance, a French resistance fighter. And I know that he recently got his own Legion of Honor.
Oh my gosh. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, my dear.
We would love to have a conversation with you on our program sometime.
I would be very happy to talk with you.
Oh, how terrific. Mr. Masters, you are remarkable. You connect us to the most fascinating people. Thank you so much for joining us. We also, and I have somebody else who I bet would be interested in talking with you. Michael Naya, you have your hand up. I know you're a college student who interviews World War II veterans. I know that you want to interview Bob. I'm sure there are other people here on this program you'd be interested in interviewing. Why don't you unmute yourself and tell us what you do?
So thank you for having me on here tonight. It's really a pleasure. So I started interviewing World War II veterans about 7 years ago when I was 14. I'm going to be 21 in July. And it started with a veteran of the 3rd Infantry Division named John Rembish. He served from Italy all the way to Germany during World War II. His unit liberated Berchtesgaden, and he was my first interview. Since that time, I've interviewed over 200 World War II veterans.
Oh,
I currently serve as archivist for the Sons and Daughters of Pearl Harbor Survivors and historian for the USS Yorktown CV5 Club. So I've been busy.
Can we get Bob in that club, the USS Yorktown Club?
Let's get him in. I want to ask Mr. Masters, is there any way that you could, or I'm sorry, is there any way that somebody could set up the interview with Michel Masters, the French resistance fighter, as I would love to talk to him, and Mr. Miller, I would love to talk to you about your time in the service one day, if that's something you'd be willing to do.
absolutely. I'd love it.
I would love that.
Oh man, yeah, I will connect you, Michael, to Bob after the program's over. I'll also connect you to Mr. Scott Masters, Canada's greatest history teacher, and he could connect you to Michelle. Michelle and Bob, you're going to be busier than you planned, I think, with talking to people and doing interviews. So thank you very much, Michael, for joining us, and thank you, Scott. Oh, Connor Ritchie, before we get on to a few announcements, and then we want to get into our conversation with Bob. Connor Ritchie, I have not seen you in so long. You are still in Lafayette, Louisiana. I can see it's sunny there, warm. How are you?
Very well. How about yourself?
Good. I know that you're another person who wants to interview Bob Miller.
That's correct.
I will connect you to Bob Miller. Now, are you still in high school or have you graduated? I'm
just a senior. I'll be graduating next month.
Excellent. Congratulations. Wonderful. Well, when you graduate, we'll have to, applaud you and have you maybe share your plans, post high school plans with us sometime.
That's not a problem. I'll surely do that.
Okay. Thank you, Connor. Hey, I want to acknowledge our sponsor. We're very grateful to Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. Adagio Health is a healthcare provider that specializes in healthcare for women, children, and families. And they have a wing that addresses tobacco use. And what they want to do is encourage people to quit and help people to quit. And they also want to educate Americans about the hazards of tobacco use and advocate for healthier places to live, work, and play. You can find out more about what Tobacco-Free Adagio Health does at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. That's tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. I also received today this wonderful picture of our youngest member of the Veterans Breakfast Club. His name is Isaac Hall, and he is Sean Hall's new son. Sean, how old is Isaac now? 2.5 months or so?
2 weeks tomorrow, or 12 weeks. Sorry, 12 weeks tomorrow. 2 weeks, BB, huge. 12 weeks tomorrow. And can you believe it? He's already a captain.
Captain Adorable. He's Captain Adorable. Yes, absolutely. And he is adorable. So he's coming on 3 months old now.
Yeah, time flies. It's crazy. He's holding his head up, smiling at us. He recognizes us now. Even today, I got a little giggle out of him, which was a fun milestone. You don't ever want to put him down because he's just the best. But I will say I had some guests over the weekend, and I had to change my shirt 3 times before they got here because he's also Captain Spit Up. And
hey, it's not a party unless somebody spits up. That's what I say. So yeah,
it's a party every hour with him.
It's a party 24/7 in the Hall household. Sean, why don't you tell us about the latest scuttlebutt that was just released today?
Sure. We've always been interested in veterans who started businesses after service, giving back to their community. Jeremy Mock here, he was in the Marine Corps, left. He's now a Navy reservist. But once a Marine, always Marine. He holds his Marine service very high. And he started in Jeanette, PA, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Pittsburgh here, a little southeast. He started Glass City Cafe. And he did that because in that area, Jeanette, called the Glass City, they wanted to help revitalize the downtown. He was down there. He realized this needed to breathe some life into that area. So he started Glass City Cafe, and he pulls all of his product from other veteran-owned businesses. Great story with Jeremy. Had a wonderful conversation with him. I don't know if anybody lives down around Jeanette, but please stop into Glass City Cafe and help support him and check out the Scuttlebutt for his interview. He's a great guy, and I couldn't say enough great things about him.
The Scuttlebutt is our Veterans Breakfast Club podcast. We release it once a week. Sean is the director, producer, and host of the Scuttlebutt, and you could access the Scuttlebutt wherever you get your podcasts, but also on our website if you'd like. You can go and listen to and watch the video, the YouTube video of the conversations that Sean has with veterans and military families. So that is, and you could also watch archived versions of this program, VBC Happy Hour, also on our website, which is veteransbreakfastclub.org. There are 3 events I want to make people aware of. If you live in the Pittsburgh area, there's an event tomorrow night. It's a wonderful event. I went last year. It's by an organization called OCS, Our Community Salutes. It's a nationwide organization, and they hold events where they recognize new enlistees who have just graduated high school, people who have enlisted in the military, and it honors them and celebrates them and kind of welcomes them, into the military community. They're having the recognition ceremony here in Pittsburgh tomorrow night at 6:30. It begins, and it's in Cheswick. Shriners at Pittsburgh Shrine Center. If you're in the area, we'd love to have you join us. I am going to be the MC of this event. We're going to have Lieutenant General Walter Piat there speaking, and also the highly dynamic Command Sergeant Major Michelle Jones, who will be giving a very inspirational talk. I was there last year. Man, she almost got me to join up at age 57. That's how convincing she was. So if you could make it, we'd love to have you. Also, next week, Sean has put together this wonderful program for May 1st. That's next Monday, a week from tonight, with the author of this book, The Prisoner in His Palace, Will Bardenwerper. Will is an Army infantry officer who wrote a book that will be made into a major motion picture. Correct, Sean?
Yeah, I just got sold the rights. I was just chatting with him today. He's a Pittsburgher, believe it or not, lives over in Swickley. And I'm listening to the book now through audiobook. This came to us from Don Nemchek. He kind of put him on our radar. We reached out. Will's excited to come on next week and chat with us. He's got not only his service, but this book and another book that he's going to be working on soon that we're excited to talk about, which has more to do about baseball than veteran story. But we'll get into the Super 12, the soldiers that guarded Saddam Hussein till his final days, next week. So be sure to join us for that.
And you bring something up, Sean, that I want to emphasize. Don Nemchek is the one who connected us to or alerted us to this book. And this author, Scott Masters, introduced me to Bob Miller. If you know of a veteran or a guest who you think would be good for the Scuttlebutt or good for the happy hour, please do let us know and make the connection, because it's with this wonderful network, this wonderful community we have, that we get connected to these interesting voices and people sharing their stories with us. And then the final event that I want to let people know about will be happening on Tuesday, May 2nd. This will be online and in person. And man, I can tell it's going to be a big one. We're going to have it here in Bethel Park, which is a southern suburb of Pittsburgh. Again, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, we encourage you to attend this breakfast. Rocky Blyer will be the special guest, and he'll be sharing his story. The Pittsburgh Steeler, 4-time Super Bowl winner, received a Purple Heart in Vietnam and fought back for a highly successful, Super Bowl football career. So he'll be joining us, Christ United Methodist Church on Highland Road in Bethel Park, 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday, May 2nd. And we are also going to stream this live. So Rocky will be sharing his story. We're going to stream it online. We will archive it on our website. So if you can't catch it live, you'll be able to watch it later. Look forward to that. All right, let's get into Bob. Bob Miller, we're finally getting to your story. Here it is. Here's a picture of you in the Navy. This is you after you've come back from Guadalcanal, 1943, maybe? Oh, I'm sorry, Bob, you need to unmute. I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm sorry about that, Bob. We muted you shortly.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, this is you had this picture taken when you got back to the U.S. or Hawaii from Guadalcanal?
Right. We came back to the United States to change squadrons. Excuse me. And replenish the ship and they had a lot of work to do on the ship.
What's the deal with the beard? Are you allowed to wear a beard in the Navy?
No, normally not, except that when we were coming back, the captain said, those of you that wish to grow a beard can, but when we go back to the States, then you have to make the decision of whether you're going to keep it or get rid of it. And by the way, I was surprised that my beard was red.
Was your hair not red?
No, I was brown, you know.
Did they call you Redbeard?
The pirate.
Like the pirate? That's right. Now this one of the interesting features of your Navy career is that it started quite young. You joined what was called the Junior Navy Reserves at age 13 in 1936.
Right.
What did the Junior Navy Reserves do?
Well, they taught us a lot of things. We had to learn, it was like, in the Boy Scouts, you earn badges.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much the same thing with the Navy. You had to decide what you were going to aim for, and they were going to teach you. But of course, there were many things that we learned: how to march, how to handle a rifle. We did many things there. I learned semaphore, and in fact, something I didn't tell you, that on the Raven they had me teaching semaphore to the crew
because you had learned it,
right?
And Trey Berman is a member of the Sea Cadets. Trey Berman is a high school student who's on this Zoom call right now. And Trey just put into the chat that the Junior Naval Reserve was the predecessor to the Sea Cadets. And then in 1938, the Junior Naval Reserves became the American Nautical Cadets. And you had this kind of a blouse. So I guess it was inevitable, Bob, that when the time came, you would end up in the Navy rather than another branch of service.
Yeah, I'm glad I did. In fact, I really intended to stay in when I went in, but it didn't work out that way.
You did your boot camp in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yes.
And you joined before Pearl Harbor. I mean, you joined in January 1941. Why?
Right.
Why did you join?
Good question. I was a handful as a young boy, and my father decided that the Navy would straighten me out. and at 17, he brought me down. In fact, it was January 6th, I believe, and we had to sign some papers, and then they said, okay, we'll call you when we're ready for you. It seemed like after World War I, they destroyed all the training places, and they had to rebuild them now, and they weren't quite ready for us. And in fact, if you don't mind, I'll tell you something now.
Sure.
When we went to boot camp, instead of having bunks ready, we had to sleep in hammocks. Yeah.
Hard to imagine.
It was really a wonderful time for me.
You liked it?
Oh, I loved it.
Did you really? What did you love about it?
Everything. I loved how I don't know. It's just the camaraderie, the things we had to do, everything meant something. And
Yes.
Each step you took, you learned something new. It was just amazing.
That is so well put, Bob, because that's something that I've heard from our veterans over the past 15 years, is that they've said that when you join the Navy, what you're told over and over again, that what you are doing is important, that people are relying on you. And even you might be 17 years old or 18 years old, but your job is important. I'm so struck, Bob, that your first of the 11 ships was, I believe, this one, the Constellation.
Yes, that was it. We slept on hammocks on there. And of
That's
course, when we got up, oh, in fact, you even show the beams, because every time we would move around, we'd hit our heads on the beams. And the only place you could stand up was between the beams. So that's, oh yeah. And then, of course, they had the rigging going up to all these sails that we had to climb the rigging and set the sails. And that was wonderful.
My gosh, that is just so wonderful that in 1941, there you are on this 19th century sailing ship, sleeping on these hammocks as if you're a 19th century sailor, hitting your heads. And I've been on a ships like this, or the Constitution in Boston. This is the Constellation, which I believe is in Baltimore. And man, when you tour this thing, you better keep your head down or else you're going to get a welt on your forehead.
Yeah, what's missing on this picture is all the cannons that lined up both walls, and they were all, I never knew how they loaded and did the cannons, and they were on wheels. And when the cannon would shoot, the whole cannon would roll back. And I didn't realize, how did they put the cannonball in? So they had to put it in from the front. So you couldn't get outside the ship in order to put it in. So as this rolled back on this rolling platform, it was far enough back to put the ball that went into the cannon. It was really amazing. And then, of course, in order to get the cannon back out again, they had pulleys on both sides where the men pulled these lines, and the cannon would roll up, and the muzzle would stick out the side. Now, you couldn't turn it left or right. It had to only point in one spot. So as the ship turned, then you could fire when you had something to fire at.
Unbelievable. And this is, I mean, this is now a ship that you could tour, but in your day, it was used as a training vessel, I guess. They were training you. Oh,
yes. How else would you know how to set those sails? And when you climbed up the rigging and went out on these, I forget what they're called, that was holding the sails. Damn it, my mind. But anyhow, you didn't walk on a platform out there. It was a heavy rope. Here's the cannons.
Yeah. So they still had these cannons in there when you were training.
Yeah, that's true. And not the only difference is now the wheels are not in the troughs that would bring the cannon, roll back. That this shows it on the wooden platform. Oh, I touched something.
Oh, no. I did that.
Yeah.
I took it down.
Oh, okay. It was a heavy, I guess you call them hawsers, that you would normally tie the ship up to the dock. So that's what you walked on going out there. And it usually, you had, I think it was 3 men on each side. There was a line that was every so often that you would come apart easily, and everybody would have to do it at the same time so that the whole sail would just flap down.
Now, eventually you got put on, or after the Constellation, you got put on a modern 20th century battleship, the USS Wyoming.
Yes, but that wasn't modern. That the Wyoming was from World War One. Well, I guess all their battleships were from World War One, and that was amazing. It's.
And what was your job on the Wyoming?
Well, when I first went on board, taking a shower was the big thing. With salt water and the saltwater soap, that was amazing.
We have got Sean Hall is just a kid here, He doesn't even know what a saltwater shower is. Not that I really do either. Tell us what a saltwater shower is.
Well, they give you a bar of saltwater soap and a bucket of salt water. And first you take some of it and wet yourself down, and you use the saltwater soap and you go all over you. And then you use the rest of it to rinse yourself off. Now, this is all on a large terracotta platform that sloped down to the middle that had a drain. So all that salt water would go down the drain with the soapy suds. But when you finished, you still felt clammy, you know. But then they gave me two jobs. One was I was second loader on a 3-inch anti-aircraft gun. And my other job, which they gave me, which I thought that I was given the worst job on the ship, was to be captain of the petty officer's head. You know, that's the latrine. I
Right.
said, oh God, they really fixing me up. So I went in there and they explained to me what had to be done. And it was so much cleaning up that had to be done. But then I found out that the showers in there was real water. And I loved that. I could take a shower in real water. And it was amazing. I came to.
And you realized that there was a important perk to this job of being in charge of the petty officer's head, right?
Right. And I kept that thing spotless. I didn't want to lose that job until they came to me and says, pack your gear, you're getting transferred. And should I stop now or keep going?
Yeah, no, keep going. And I just want to ask, hey, please put in the chat, those of you who are in the Navy, when did are there still saltwater showers? You know, no, Chris Perlow saying no. Okay. Was that just did that end with World War II, Chris Perlow? Something like that. Okay. If you want to add in the chat.
I think desalinization sort of eliminated the necessity for that.
Okay. So, and when was that, Chris?
Historically, I'm not sure about that, but that's I've never heard of the saltwater showers before, but that has to be a pre-World War II or shortly after World War II. That went out the window with desalinization developed, and now you actually purified that salt water. You made it clean.
Because a saltwater shower sounds a little kind of gross to me. I could totally picture that feeling of like being clammy and slippery and greasy, and yeah.
That's what I think about the saltwater soap. It's like, that doesn't sound pleasant.
No.
Sounds like a loofah scrub, but worse.
Oh, and I looked it up. Saltwater soap. I mean, now it's like, you know, expensive. It's like a special treatment that you give yourself, you know, take a bath in salt water. But anyhow, Bob, I don't want to interrupt your story. You got transferred to another ship.
Right. First of all, I begged them not to transfer me. I didn't want to lose my shower, but to no avail. Oh, there's the Raven. That's my ship. You know, every time we would go on Liberty, and the Liberty boat would pass this ship that was tied up to the end of the pier with 55 on it, and it looked like a small destroyer, and that's the ship I got transferred to.
And what kind of a ship was it?
It was a combination. It had just been built a few months before, and there was two of them built side by side in the same. I forget what you call it when they build a ship. They do it in a dry
dock. Yeah.
Anyhow, there were two of them side by side, the Raven and the Osprey, and that they were pretty much identical, except one was riveted and the other was welded. And I guess they were trying to see which was better or whatever. But anyhow, what was I supposed to be talking
Well,
about?
you know, this is the ship where you saw your first action, right? This is where you were in the Battle of the Atlantic.
Oh, that's true. It's, well, at first, since it was a new ship, we had to work out all the bugs and that there were many problems with it. Uh, and Everything went wrong. The rudder didn't work, the compass didn't work, there were 100 things wrong with it. And we finally found out later on that it came out in the Navy newspaper that the people that worked in the Navy yards building these ships were sabotaging by throwing nuts and bolts into it and making sure that everything was wrong. And it was just amazing.
Whoa.
And, yeah.
What was their motive?
Uh,
Why? Why were they sabotaging?
I really have no idea,
Oh,
unless they wanted to make sure that we stayed out of the war, because everybody didn't want us to get involved in that
right.
war that was going on.
And it was there on the Raven when Pearl Harbor happened, when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, but before that, they had installed on the ship a sonar, but sonar in those days wasn't very good. It was just like if you would put your ear to the water. It really, at the beginning, a lot of things weren't good and we weren't ready for it. And we had to have a big learning curve on everything we did. And as we're cruising around out there, they would have us and other, they would have those World War I destroyers, because we didn't have much of a Navy at the beginning. And they had us doing escort duty. Every time a ship would go out, they'd have us go out to protect it, because the U-boats were out there and we weren't even at war with them. And they were sinking our ships up and down the East Coast. And we were out there to protect all our ships going up and down the East Coast from we covered from Nova Scotia to the Panama Canal and all the ports in between.
And hundreds of American ships were being sunk by German U-boats in 1941, 1942. I mean, it was not publicly known at the time. The government didn't want the information released, but it was a real catastrophe, Bob, and it was a real dangerous place to be out in the Atlantic.
Yeah, many times we found they were shooting torpedoes out of us, and luckily we weren't hit by any of them. Some would go behind us or in front of us, or one of them went under us, until one day we're off of Cape Hatteras, and every dawn and dusk we would have general quarters. Now, general quarters is everybody man your battle stations.
Right.
And we would do that because we found that was the best time for the U-boats to attack. So here we're at general quarters. First of all, I was at the helm, steering the ship, which I thought I was pretty good at. In fact, they had me teach some of the new men. But anyhow, and they gave me for my battle station right outside. Normally you would have a hatch, but here it was a door, and it would go out to the starboard wing of the bridge, where I'd have my 50 caliber water-cooled machine gun, and they would strap me in, and the strap would go behind you, so as you lean back, you can get at airplanes, or and lean forward, you can get at the submarines or enemy ships. But anyhow,
is this kind of what it looked like?
Yes, but I only remember one barrel.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, it was the beginning. Yeah, the war.
Right.
Our whole armament on that ship was we had two 3-inch guns, one forward and one in the after part of the ship, and three 50 caliber machine guns, one on each wing of the ship and one between the two smokestacks that could get both sides, whichever side it was.
Right.
So that's what happened. So they had general quarters, and I turned over the wheel to the quartermaster and went outside to man my machine gun. So they strapped me in and they put in the ammo in just like the real thing. And we'd train up at the sky at the fake make-believe airplane. Then we would train down at a make-believe submarine. And there in my sight was a torpedo coming straight at us. Now, the reason I was able to see it is because in the North Atlantic, it was very rough. And those, the waves were pretty high. And this was breaking through the trough of the wave. And you could see the propellers spinning in the back of the torpedo. And it's coming straight at us. And I started shooting. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "This is only a drill. It's only it had to be an officer. It was only a drill." And I kept shooting, and that thing exploded. It was just amazing.
Wow.
But and I thought I was the only one shooting, and I probably was. But the one who was manning the machine gun and between the smokestacks, he said he got it. To this day, I'm sure I got it.
You got it. You're the one who got it. Boy, is that something. And that was before Pearl Harbor, correct?
Oh,
correct?
yes, absolutely. There were a lot of torpedoes before Pearl Harbor.
Boy, oh boy. And December 7th, 1941 was actually your 18th birthday, 19th birthday?
17, 18.
19th.
No, I think it was my
18th birthday, December 7th, 1941. That's your birthday. What do you remember of that day?
We had just come back from a trip escorting a convoy, and we pulled into Norfolk, Virginia, and they set off general quarters. And I said to the man next to me, I says, "Somebody's going to get in big trouble doing that for my birthday." And we found out it was Pearl Harbor had been bombed. Now, I never heard of Pearl Harbor because all my duty was in the Atlantic. And then we found out what happened. Yeah.
And life got really busy for you. I mean, the war in the Atlantic escalated. You end up going on, I guess, duty in the North Atlantic in the winter, right? January, February, March, very cold there.
Oh, yeah. In fact, ice would form on the gunnels of the ship, and we would have to chop it off with axes. Otherwise, the weight, could capsize the ship.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember going up to the crow's nest, which you had to climb up this long pole up to this little container way up there. And you would, there's a trap door in the bottom, you'd climb in, and then there'd be the cover was on hinges, but it would be closed. And there was a slot that you could look out. And if you look out, first, all you see is sky. And then all you see is ocean. And that alone, can make you seasick.
Oh.
And then when you look down, you can see it's as if you're standing still and the ship is passing under you, first one way, and then the other. Now, if the person before you got sick up there, what I would do is I would get out of there and I would climb up a little further and close the cover on top of that thing and sit on top. And that way I wouldn't have to contend with what was going on inside of it.
Amazing what you endured. Really, truly. I've come to learn, Bob, that so much of war is that kind of harrowing inconvenience, illness, cold, hot, and that's even before people are shooting at you. And I know that in the North Atlantic, you'd be escorting oilers and other ships to Nova Scotia and elsewhere. Did you ever see a German U-boat?
Yes, on one occasion, the lookout spotted a U-boat, and we made a sharp turn to the right because we were heading north, and at flank speed we went after him. And of course he's diving and he goes under, and of course the sonar it beeps as it sends out a beam and comes back to it, and it shows that we're getting closer and closer, and then it shows when we're over it. If my memory serves me right, I think when we're over it, it stops. So we know that we're right on top of it. Now, since that was early, before the war, all we had was the depth charges, 300-pound depth charges that we could roll off the stern. We had 2 racks that would go up, and we could roll them off, first port and then starboard, and then port and starboard. 4 we would drop. And then, of course, the plan is to go ahead and make a complete turn and come back across it and drop 4 more. But what happened in this particular case, when we dropped the 4, I believe it was at Cape Hatteras, and it's shallow there. Yeah. In fact, that's why you see all the masts and sterns of the ship sticking out of the water. Now, most of them are on the charts, except for the ones that were recently sunk. Now, here we're on top of this thing, and we're throwing these depth charges off. And the next thing I know, the stern, which is the back of the ship, rose up out of the water from the explosion, and we slid down like a sliding pond, and the rudder is jammed hard to port. And now we're going around in circles, and the submarine is out there. And
you're a sitting duck because you're going around in the...
Right, right. So we finally get it under control, and the sub is long gone. And now I'm thinking the people on the sub think we must be crazy, and we probably think we're there, and they're looking for us, and we're way out here.
Oh my! What? And I should let people know that one of the reasons you're able to recall almost every single day of World War II is because you kept a copious journal. I mean, you kept a very detailed diary of what you did, where you were. You weren't allowed to, Bob.
That's right. And I got caught a few times.
You did get caught, huh?
Yeah. Yep. And they would take the one I was working on, they would take that away. But I had many others.
You had backups. And I mean, you have your record, you're able to account for almost every single day of your service, 6 years of service. It's in remarkable detail. When you played baseball, when you had liberty, the friends you ran into, the watches that you had. I do want to invite people to ask questions, raise their hands, ask questions of Bob. I know Rick Arisman, a fellow Navy veteran, Bob. Rick asks and you may have answered this already. What was your primary rate or rating aboard your ships?
Well, every ship was different. And of course, everything changed from the time I was apprentice seaman and went to service school and got knocked down I was promoted to second class seaman, and I got knocked down to apprentice seaman. And then, of course, on the Raven, I worked my way up to seaman first class. There's a lot of things that I knew, and I really was able to help the Raven do things that evidently they didn't know. One of the things was we had heaving lines. Now, what a heaving line is, it's like a clothesline, but it has a lead ball in the end of it so that you can take it and throw it a long distance. It could be to another ship, or it could be to a dock, or whatever. So I would make heaving lines that were really great, because onto the heaving line, then you could tie on a regular hawser to go ashore. Is that enough on that?
That's Trey Berman has a question. Trey is a high school student, lives in Annapolis, Maryland. He's going to join the Navy. He is a Sea Cadet right now. Trey, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how are you? You had your hand up.
I did. Thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I had a question. So my great grandfather was in the Navy as well. He was on the USS Polaris AG-11, which was an armed refrigerator ship, I think. And he remembers in great detail being frustrated when he had to go on these Atlantic convoys because of the Liberty ships, and they were not the best ships. They only went 11 knots, and that was his issue. But he told me that a lot of the other veterans of Atlantic convoys that he knew really hated the Liberty ships as well, unless they were merchant marines. Do you have any opinions or any experiences with Liberty ships?
Good question, Trey. Thank you, Trey. Yeah, do you remember Liberty ships, Bob?
Oh, yes. In fact, it was Kaiser who was building Liberty ships. And we should hold that for another story.
Yeah, Henry J. Kaiser. He did major construction projects, built Liberty ships during World War II. He was building them at a rate of like one per day at one point, I think in 1944. These were very cheap, rickety, poorly put together ships from what I have read.
Well, they were watertight.
Their job was to make it across the ocean once to deliver cargo and men. They didn't even have to come back, just make it once. Yes. So what do you remember of Liberty ships, Bob?
Well, what I remember most about them is when we took a convoy up to Nova Scotia. And when we went through the submarine gates, oh, by the way, I don't know if anybody knows about this, but every place that along the coast that we didn't want submarines sneaking into, the stretch across it was a submarine gate, and they had to open it and close it when one of the ships went in or out.
Right.
Now, when we got up to Nova Scotia, they had many Liberty ships in there. They had every size ship that you can imagine, because they were getting ready to send convoys from there across to England, and they were also sending convoys to Russia, which is really something. That's some trip to go all the way to Russia.
Yeah,
that's my the only association I had with Liberty ships.
So, Bob, then in May 1942, you get another transfer, and you're being transferred now to aircraft carriers. And I think you did some training on some carriers before you got your, the longer term.
The Raven was the first one we trained on. First, before we first went into a squadron of fighter planes, and at the Navy, the best and only fighter plane they had, their latest one was the F-4F, and that was what the Navy used for up until when they came out with better planes. But what I started, so here the squadron was before they went on the Ranger, they had to train. Oh, that's a good picture. That's a great picture. That plane is probably sitting on the catapult, ready to be catapulted or they're waiting for something, but you can see that the propeller is you can't see the one on the catapult, but if you look to the left of those plane directors, you can see that propeller is turning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's on the Swanee, which you were on, I believe, right?
Oh yes, that was for Africa.
Jeez. And so you might have been on this ship when the photo was taken.
Very possible.
Because this was taken in late 1942 or early 1943.
Yeah, if it was on the Swanee, then I was there, and that was probably it might have been one of my planes, but I don't remember. But that's an F4F. That's the squadron I was in, and
how
there was
interesting.
something we were trying. On the Ranger. Before we were able to go on the Ranger, they sent us out to Drivers, Virginia, which they made a landing field out of this cornfield. They cleared an area and made where our planes would practice takeoff and landings with a signal officer giving the directions with his flags on whether the plane was too high or too low, or going too fast or too slow. And when he was at the right position, the signalman would give him a cut and he would come in and land. Now, when they got to learn some of this, now they had to go on a moving aircraft carrier to see if they learned enough. And that's when they did. Now this particular carrier, I don't know if you can see on the bow, it had looks like a fence across the bow. But when we did that, we used these things in stormy weather to protect our planes that went into the cleats that you'd use for tying down the planes, and they would slip into them. They made of steel. At least I think they were steel. I don't think they were aluminum. And they were many of them. They went side by side so that when the waves came over the front, they would stop it and keep it from destroying our planes on the flight deck.
Wow.
But here, what happened with this ship, or should I stop?
No, go ahead.
Okay. We had so many planes crashed, and they said, look, this squadron is not ready to go on a carrier. They've got to go back. And we went back to Drivers, Virginia, so that they could practice these landings, takeoff and landings more to get better at it.
Right.
But this was the first one.
And I believe the Ranger was the first purpose-built aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy. I think
yes.
The others had been converted.
Yeah, you see these smokestacks?
Yes.
With 3 on one side and 3 on the other. During flight operations, what they did is they turn them down away from the ship. So they stick out on both sides so that the planes can have a landing area free of any obstructions, except for the cables that were across to catch the hook on the plane.
How about that, Bob? What an education you're giving us. You did some training on this one also, the USS Charger.
Oh, that was the next one we went on. Once they said, okay, it seems like they're doing pretty good now, so we got to try another carrier. Now, the Charger only trained pilots on takeoff and landings in the Chesapeake Bay. Now, the Ranger, was a seagoing ship, but the Charger was only for training.
Okay.
And that's what our next ship was to train on. And here they trained on this, and we had too many planes that still cracked up, either on the carrier or into the ocean. So finally, they said, no, look, you're still not ready, and they sent us back to Drivers, Virginia.
And what was? Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
yeah, after a short time where they had more practice, and I guess they were running out of time because they had planned this invasion of North Africa, French North Africa.
Yes.
And so they finally says, look, we got to get this thing underway and going, and you'll get your practice on board the Charger.
It'll be on the job training, and we need you whether you're ready or not. Yeah.
Right. So now, since this, the Charger was only, and you can see the 30 on it, as that way you know it's the Charger. That was the number. But anyhow, but had never been out in the ocean. So here we came down to the pier. All our planes came down to the pier, and we hoisted them up on the flight deck. And there was an elevator. I don't see the elevator here. Yeah, I'm sure there was an elevator. But anyhow, they took all 30 planes and they loaded them on the Charger. And now we're underway, heading out to sea through the submarine gates. And the sea became very rough. And that's when we began to start to show how we can take off and land on this carrier. Should I go on?
Yeah. And was it the Swanee? Is this
No, this
one?
was before the Swanee.
This
we-
before, right?
Yeah, we were taking the Charger. That was supposed to be, because the Swanee hadn't been finished being completed. They had, since we didn't have any aircraft carriers in those days, they took 4 tankers, SO tankers, and converted them to aircraft carriers. Now, 3 of them were ready, but the 4th one, the Swanee, they were still working on it. And even when it went out to check the engines and stuff, the workman was still on it working to get the plane ready for the invasion. But if it didn't get ready, then we would have to take the Charger. So now what happened was we're out in the rough ocean with the Charger, and the planes are the first plane is going to get ready to take off. Now, if you can picture the bow of the ship going up and down with every big wave.
Yeah.
And of course, it was going from side to side too, but not when you're heading into the wind. When you're heading into the wind, the only motion you have at that time is the bow going up and down. So here, the signal officer winds up the propeller, tells the pilot to wind up, and he sends him down the runway in order to take off. So what happens is this is new for the signal officer, whoever is doing this, and he didn't know that you had to make sure that you timed it so that the bow would be coming up so the plane could take off. So the first plane taking off, the bow went down and the plane went straight into the water.
Oh.
Now, at first we thought, oh God, we lost the pilot that was flying the plane. But what happened was they always have during flight operations is a destroyer close by to pick up any pilots that go into the drink. So they did. They picked up the pilot and they saved him. He was a little beat up, but he managed to get back finally. So anyhow, so when this happened, now the signal officer who's sending the planes down the duct, he knows that he has to be careful and make sure that when that bow is coming up, that the plane is at the end of the runway.
Oh.
And sure enough, the next plane he sent down, the bow was up and it went up and it started flying and everybody started yelling, yay, and clapping. Everybody was happy. They didn't want to lose any more planes. Now that was fine.
But it was on this ship, the Swanee, which eventually was ready, correct, for the North Africa invasion.
Oh yeah, so you want to leave that the Charger alone? Okay.
Yeah, let's leave the Charger alone and move on to this, because this was the converted oiler that was made into kind of a mini aircraft carrier.
Right. Now, what happened with these 4 aircraft carriers that were converted from tankers is they were much bigger and longer and wider than all of the other CVEs, which are the escort carriers, which is what this is, were smaller. And anyhow, these were called the big CVEs. There was only 4 of them. They wanted more, but they needed all the other tankers to supply oil for the fleet.
Right.
And so they couldn't take any more. But if they had 100 more, they would have used them. So now we're the Charger had brought us to Bermuda, which some of the squadrons got off, and the rest of them, when the Charger and the Ranger went out in the calmer waters, they were learning to take off and landing. So finally, they did quite a bit of this, and they were getting pretty good out of it. And now they transferred all the squadrons to Bermuda, and the Charger returned to Norfolk to continue training pilots in nice, calm water. So when the Charger came, we woke up one morning and they said the Charger is in port, and everybody's happy that we're waiting for the Charger, and it finally came in, and a truck was waiting for us, and we hopped on, and they took us down to the water, and we got on board the tugboat Marianne, and that took us out to the Swanee. And not only us, but all of the parts and everything we needed to keep the airplane flying. So all of this had to go out and was loaded on the Swanee.
So you are a Swanee plank owner.
No, because the plank owners were those that brought the Swanee to us.
Got it. Yeah, you were a little short. Okay, so you wanted a Swanee plank owner, but it was on the Swanee that you participated in the North Africa invasion.
Right, that's where we headed. Now they didn't want to let the submarines know that a big task force is leaving, going someplace. So out of every port along the eastern seacoast, a few of the battleships left, a few of the destroyers were with them, and a few of cruisers left from someplace. In fact, four submarines were involved in this, and they left out of Connecticut, and many ships from every port were leaving, a few with destroyer escorts. We ended up, I think, with 35 or so destroyer escorts on the whole thing.
And what do you remember of D-Day for that, which was November 8th, I think? November 8th, 1942?
Yeah, I don't remember the date. I'm glad you got it.
I think.
Yeah, what we did is when we got off the coast of Africa, we divided into three parts. We were going to attack 3 different points on the African coast. Safi, which was the one further south, and then of course we had the center, which was going into Casablanca, and then there was a northern. I'm sorry, Bob.
Keep talking.
And then there was the northern part that was going in to capture an airport up there, and Safi was going to capture an airport in there. Now they were doing pretty good. Now we were there for the center section, which was Casablanca, and in fact, on our ships we brought what's his name, Patton, General Patton, and all his tanks, and they were to go ashore once the shore was established. Oh, you can see we're out here with the Western Task Force. Now, in the Mediterranean was the British and American task forces, but ours were out here in the Atlantic where all the U-boats were, and we were doing 3. So you can see Safi was there, and Casablanca was the middle one, and Port Lyotri was to the north, and that's we were ordered not to fire unless they fired on us first, and if they did fire first, the announcement would come, batter up, and we could fire back. So we didn't know if they would fire at us.
I'm sorry, Bob. We just got interrupted a little bit.
We didn't know if they were going to fight us back because, during World War I, we sent a lot of Americans over there to fly in their Air Force, and they knew it, and they felt like we were brothers. In fact, I found out later that they thought, why are they firing on us? Because we've been waiting 2 years for them to come back and free us. But anyhow, we had quite a battle where our battleships would fire at not the towns, but at the pillboxes or the concrete enclosures that held the Nazis, the Germans, and the Vichy French. Now, I'm sure everybody knows why the French were overpowered by Germany. And even though they fought like crazy at the beginning, they figured rather than lose their whole country, that they would have the Vichy French, which was Nazis, control France.
Right.
Okay, what else you need?
And so, how active was your unit during the invasion?
Oh, very good. We flew, and we ended up shooting down many, which I shouldn't say enemy planes, because they were all flown by French. So we shot down many French planes, and we attacked many landings we covered to make sure that none of the enemy would come flying in. But we were doing a really good job. Of course, there were a lot of mistakes we made, because this is the first time that an invasion was made, and it wasn't the Marines, because the Marines do all invasions. And here we had the Army. So first, before we even left the States, the Marines were trying to teach the Army how to invade. But the Army fought it because they felt that they knew better than the Marines.
I saw you go like this, Brad Washabon. I saw you.
But anyhow, so here Patton came ashore and got his tanks ashore, and they're heading north to Casablanca, because that's where everything will be going on. And just about at the time he came to the outskirts of Casablanca, they capitulated.
Yeah.
And they said, we give up.
Can I ask you, Bob, what was your rate? What was your job at this point?
As an aircraft mechanic.
You were
I kept the
aircraft
planes-
mechanic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I kept the planes flying.
Okay. Okay. And the next ship then after the North African invasion was the Shenango?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But now that's it. See, that's another one of these converted tankers. You can see how long it is. It's much longer and lower and sturdier. Now, another advantage to these converted tankers is they still had all of the oil tanks on them. So they could supply fuel to all their destroyer escorts. In fact, I remember they thought that they could also supply fuel for the cruisers that were with us, but we never did. And I noticed that the cruisers would leave for a while here and there and I guess they were getting refueled and then would come back and be with us.
And you went through the Panama Canal on the Shenango, correct? Into the
Right.
Pacific.
Let me just add one thing. With the Shenango was there at the invasion of Africa, but it wasn't fighting. It was there. It had 78, I think, Army P-40s, I think it was, that as soon as the airfields were secured, these Army planes would fly off and they would operate from the landing field. But should I tell them the story about what happened at the bomb?
Sure. Yeah.
On the field. All our planes had been bombing all these airfields to make sure that they destroyed the planes and no planes could take off or land. So now our planes are coming in and we've got the field, but it's got all these holes in it all over the place. And they sent one plane first and that went in. And when he found out that his plane, the landing gear collapsed and the propeller broke because of the holes in the landing field. So he tried to radio back, but for some reason he couldn't use the one in his plane. I don't know why. So he ran down to the docks to one of the ships that were there and radioed back to the Shenango, don't send any more planes, but they had already left. And once they took off from the Shenango, they couldn't return.
Oh boy.
So it's okay. Now back to the Shenango. Now the Shenango, when it's coming back from the invasion, we all went through hurricanes. And what happened with the Shenango, the front part of the deck, did you ever open up a can of sardines with a key?
Yes.
Okay, that's what happened to the front of the Shenango. The whole front rolled back and the whole front end got all the water coming into it. They had to close and secure all the hatches and make sure that everybody was aft of out of that whole area because it was all flooded now. And they can always by ballast change if the part goes down, they can correct it. But anyhow, so now it's all this damage is coming back to Norfolk, and they couldn't believe that they weren't in the battle, so they had to repair it. So all the other converted tankers went before us, and they went out because they really needed them desperately in the Pacific. But we couldn't leave there till December when the not only the carrier was fixed, but the air conditioning was taken care of because all water came through all the air conditioning. But anyhow, once it was fixed, we left, we came on board the Shenango. We hoisted all the planes on board. And it was December 25th that we went through the Panama Canal, our convoy. It wasn't just our ship that was going. We were having had a whole convoy that we were protecting that was going. And we came to the Panama Canal. And when we get to the Panama Canal, the planes had to fly off to a landing field there until we got to the other end of the canal. Now, I don't know if anybody knows about the Panama Canal. Should I waste a little time on it?
You know what? Let me take like what we call a station break and just remind people this is VBC Happy Hour. This is the Veterans Breakfast Club. One of the things that we do is publish a quarterly magazine that we send out for free to about 8,000 people, and then we print out another 7,000 copies and ship them around. Please do let me know if you'd like a copy. This is our latest issue. It just came out last week. We could send it to you, put it to you in the mail. If you just send me your address, Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. That's Todd at veteransbreakfastclub.org. If you don't receive it in the mail, it's because we don't have your address. We also send out boxes of 40 or 50 or even 100 to people. We sent out a box of 100 to Don Nemchek, who's been spreading them around McKeesport and elsewhere, South Hills. And this is a great way to get the word out about our programming. So please do let us know if you'd like a copy of the magazine. And then we also do a survey after every one of our programs. It's a simple 3-question survey. What do you think about this program? What did you like or not like about it? How can we improve? We read these very closely. We get ideas for new guests. We get ideas about how to adjust what we do. Please do take a moment, takes 2.5 minutes, fill out a survey if you can. Sean will put the link, if he hasn't already, into the chat to do that. You know, I'm looking at the clock here, Bob, and I do see it's 8:22 already. And I thought what we would do is jump to the ship, the Tulagi, which was the ship you spent maybe the most time on. And that was another one of these converted carriers, correct?
Yes. No, they were built by Kaiser.
Okay, it was a Kaiser ship. Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna get a picture of it here. And then I want to show some pictures of you. Here is the Tulagi. Here it is. Okay. And this was a small, I guess you call it a carrier escort?
Right. In fact, all of these small carriers, they had to build them, these small escort carriers. And is that that's 72? Yep, that's the Tulagi. Yeah, all of them were called CVEs. They were originally intended not to go into battle because they weren't really built for battle. They were built to escort convoys. You know, their planes would make sure that the convoys weren't attacked by plane, or they had the scouting. Anyhow, they had scouting planes, the torpedo bombers that would look for submarines, and they could drop depth charges on them. But anyhow, that's that. I don't even know what we're talking about.
Bob, I want to ask you, when did you start working on the flight deck? When did you start being part of the flight crew?
Oh, that was on the Shenango.
Okay.
It seemed that they had a problem, and my fighters were coming back from a mission that they were on, and they were running out of gas, and they couldn't land because there was a plane blocking the. So I'll make that short. I managed to get that. I jumped up on a flight deck and knocked the plane director aside, and I told the plane director, "You do what I tell you." And I taxied him off of the flight deck up to the front, and they were able to land all the rest of the planes. And we only lost 1 or 2 that ran out of gas and fell into the ocean.
And so that's how you got the job.
I think so. Yeah, what they wanted me to work with. This is on the Tulagi.
And this is you. This is
Yeah.
you.
Right. Yeah, and these planes are the new planes, the F-6Fs, and they were wonderful. Really a great plane.
And so you're giving an instruction here to the pilot or to the crew?
To the pilot. If you can't see it, but the propeller is spinning on this plane under the word news. And I had just taxied him in and had him stop or going to stop, but he had to lock his tail wheel. So that's the signal I gave him, lock your tail wheel. Otherwise, when the plane gets tied down, the back of the plane can swing with the ship as it went from side to side, and it could crash into other planes. So he had to lock his tail wheel. That's what I was doing.
I didn't want the evening to end without showing this picture. This was also taken on the deck of the Tulagi during the Battle of Okinawa, I believe.
Yes, that was Okinawa.
And these
Yeah.
are tracer bullets.
Yeah, but we didn't know that we learned the hard way that the Japanese was trained to fly at night, but only one way. And as we're in this lagoon, being replenished, we were running out of food and ammunition and everything else that we needed, and replenished some of the planes that we lost. We got new planes on board. Everything was put on in this I don't know if they call it a lagoon, but anyhow, we're anchored there, and then we have a flight cover, planes flying above to protect us. And they shot down many of the planes, but some of them got through. And that's what you see firing here at the planes. Now, what you see is only one spot. There are 5 other bullets for every spot you see. So you have no idea of how many thousands of bullets are being fired.
Bob, could you tell the story of the kamikaze that was coming right at you as you were on the deck?
Yeah, that was something. We were in this same lagoon getting replenished, and it was during the day. And some of these planes were coming, and our planes were up there protecting, and they shot down many of them. But this one plane got through somehow. And I'm standing on the flight deck, and he's coming straight at me. I can see the pilot in the plane, and he's coming straight at me. And there's no way I can get away from this. No place to hide, no place to run. I'm just standing there. But I kept a little log in my pocket. A small thing that fits in your pocket. And then, of course, I would transfer all the information to my bigger log. And I took it out of my pocket and I wrote down, this is it. I knew I was going to die. And I put it back in my pocket. At the very last instant, I don't know whether he was hit many times or what it was, but his right wing just dropped a slight bit, and he just missed the going at our carrier and went into the ship next to us. And I don't know if that was an ammunition ship or what it was, but that thing blew sky high. That was amazing. And then afterwards, I thought maybe this pilot was told that he was there to sink ships, not to kill people. And maybe he saw me and changed to a ship that he didn't see a person. I don't know.
Boy, I do want to invite people to ask questions. I'm looking at the clock again. It's 8:29. We're toward the end of our program, and it feels like I've never spent 90 minutes go faster, Bob, than this conversation with you. Sean, you have your hand up.
Yeah, there was just a comment in the chat by Carolyn Jonas. Bob, you may know them, that your 3 second cousins are on this call with you. They're the daughters, son, and daughter-in-law of your first cousins, Robert and Hilda. They haven't seen you in years, and they just wanted to make a comment that they were here to listen to your story.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing.
So
I didn't know that they knew about it. Oh, that is something. So now.
Hi, Bob. Just wanted to say hello. It's Carol and Hilda's daughter.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is so great. Oh, I wish I was there to hug you.
Oh. How great. And Judy, you are related also?
I know there's a Judy that's in my family. You know, I have so many.
Judy can't unmute herself, but
I
she,
am.
there she
Sure.
goes.
Yes, Bob Miller. I'm Carolyn's sister, Hilda's
Oh,
daughter.
wow.
You helped me buy my first bowling ball when you were working in Valley Stream.
Your first bowl. Everybody remembers their first bowling ball.
Yeah, I remember I worked for Herman's World of Sporting Goods.
That's where it was. On Long Island, that's where it was.
Glenn and Karen, say hello.
And then Glenn and Karen. How are you related, Glenn and Karen?
Karen,
Hi,
she's a cousin.
Glenn and Karen. We're Bob's Zolkin's son and daughter-in-law.
Well,
Nice.
you have a remarkable relative here with Bob Miller. I mean,
Yes, we know that.
you do know that. 99 years old, unbelievable memory, unbelievably eloquent. Just such a delight to talk with. Bob, there's so much more to your story that you haven't shared with us tonight, I know. This is an unfair question to ask you, Bob, but as you look back on your long life, 99 years, you're in the Navy for only 6 of your 99 years, but it seems like it's a very important part of your life, maybe one of the most important parts. Why is that, do you think?
Good question. I believe it's because I really enjoyed being in the Navy. I know there were a lot of times that were very hard and very bad, but I like to think of all the good times I had and what was accomplished. That I felt that I helped bring our country to where it is today, and this means a lot to me. When I wear all my medals, I don't know if you can see them there, oh, by the way, if you see my jacket behind me, it has medals on it, and I have a miniature pair that I wear here, but I wear them not for me. I wear them for all of those men that never came home. And whenever I go out and I'm in the market or wherever I am, I let everybody know that I'm wearing this for them. You know, it's a wonderful feeling. Oh, there's the skipper.
Yeah, one of those medals that you received.
Yeah.
What medal is that? Do you remember?
That must have been the commendation I received, but that's not the Admiral. This is on the. I'm sure it's on the Tulagi, I think, because that's when they gave me. Most medals I received was for the whole ship.
Yeah.
For everybody, and but there was only one medal that I received was only for me.
Yes.
For the invasion of southern France, where I was the petty officer in charge of all the flight decks, of all the plane directors on the flight deck and the admiral yelled down from the bridge. We had the admiral on board our ship, and he says, "Miller, we're going to get all these planes off in 15 minutes." And I yelled back at him, you know, me, a stupid kid. I didn't say sir or anything. I yelled back, "What's the extra 5 minutes for?" And he laughed so hard, I thought he'd fall off the bridge. And you know, that day we broke the fleet record.
Oh,
Isn't that amazing?
and I do want to remind people, you were 20 years old when you did that with the invasion of southern France. 20 years old in charge of that flight deck. It's
There's my medals. That's
there they are.
That's the medals that I received. And in fact, there's one medal that I received that I don't wear or I don't show it because I don't think I earned it. And that is the Good Conduct Medal.
Well, it was good enough. How about good enough conduct you had during World War II? Bob, what a delight it is to share this 90 minutes with you. Thank you so much for taking the time and sending me your recollections and the things that you've written over the years. I do. Rick Arisman asked, does Bob have the record for the most ships? I think you've got to be close to having been assigned to more ships than any other sailor in World War II.
Yeah, most of them are either on one or two ships. And well, when everybody asks me how come, I tell them that nobody wanted me.
Yes. Scott Masters, I thank you most every week for sending these fascinating veterans our way. Thank you especially for Bob. I know that you came down from Canada to Maine and met with Bob. Was it last year?
Yeah, it was last summer. My sister happens to live in Maine, and I had read an article about Bob, so I figure I'm going to go up to Millinocket, which is nowhere near where my sister lives, way up in northern Maine, and we had a fantastic talk. I think I spent, 5 or 6 hours with him one day.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you so much for the referral. Bob Miller, thank you for joining us from Millinocket. Oh, we have Larry Coogan. Larry, haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
I've been here all night, Bob. Thank you very much for the wonderful stories. I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
But I just have a question. I grew up in Portland, Maine. Why are you living in Millinocket?
That's a long story.
Oh.
I was in Florida, and my son, I was in an assisted living facility, and my son came from Hawaii. By the way, my son was on submarines. My father was in World War I. My sister was a WAC. She went in as a private and became a lieutenant as an air controller at an Army airfield in Illinois. But anyhow, what was I?
How you ended up in Millinocket.
Oh,
there's your sister.
There's my sister. Yeah, Claire.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, she was great.
That's right.
Well, I'll let you, Bob, I've been in Millinocket once. Again, I grew up in Portland, Maine, and drove. I tell you what, Todd, it's a beautiful, beautiful town in the middle of nowhere, as Scott knows. But Bob, thank you very much for a wonderful evening. I flew airplanes, and thank goodness I wasn't in the Navy.
Oh, speaking of airplanes, I got my pilot's license when I was 60.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, if all my relatives don't have my email, I want to get in touch with them. If you please give it to them, I would appreciate.
Yes, and I will. Absolutely. Anybody could reach me at Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, and I could connect you to Bob. Yeah, Bob, thank you so much. Also, Millinocket is a great place to do archery, and Bob Miller at age 99 still does archery, bow and arrow, still does.
Did I send you the picture?
No, I haven't seen a picture.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Okay, and Bob, I also want to invite you Please join us any Monday night at 7 that you'd like. We'd love to have you come on again and just, share another story or two as we go along. This is a wonderful, welcoming, warm community that we have here with the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we're honored that you're a part of it.
And I have 100 more stories.
And I should say, I see Tom Wiley and Joan Dawson on. Tom was a B-17 pilot. Joan, it's so good to see you. Hi, Tom Wiley. Very good to see you. He was B-17 pilot in World War II in the 15th Air Force. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Michelle, I look forward to talking to you in the future. Take care, everybody. Have a good Monday night, and I hope to see you next week. Take care.
I was also in a B-17 squadron. I told you I have many stories.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Good night.
Love you all.